Old movies for young stoners. Old movies for young stoners. With Bob Calhoun and his friends. Should I smoke this clip and watch Montgomery Cliff? Or should I smoke a bong and watch King Kong? Old movies for young stoners. Old movies.
Welcome to Old Movies for Young Stoners, the podcast where we pair classic and cult cinema with the right strain of cannabis to enhance your trip through movie history. This week, we are joined by Floyd Webb of the Blacknuss Network as we blast off into outer space with Top of the Heap, an hallucinatory hybrid of Blaxploitation and Afrofuturism from 1972, followed by a dose of Anglo-futurist nonsense in Queen of Outer Space with Zsa Zsa Gabor. That's all right here on Episode 9 of Old Movies for Young Stoners.
Anglo-futurism. That's funny.
It might actually, with Zsa Zsa, it might actually be Austro-Hungarian futurism.
That's right. Austro-Hungarian futurism. That's Zsa Zsa.
Yeah.
She was every bit of it, too.
Oh, yeah.
She was every bit.
Okay, the theme song fades in and out again, and then I'm talking again. So here we go. And here we are, back again. Because of my bright idea to tape this episode during a holiday weekend, we are down to a few people. A skeleton crew. Imagine that. Felina Franklin is on assignment, and Corey Sklar is hosting the virtual live stream of the Mosswood Meltdown in Oakland this weekend, where he'll be hobnobbing with John Waters and Bikini Kill. But Corey is here in spirit, folks, meaning he's handling the audio editing. Thanks, Corey.
Thank you, Corey.
Yeah, thanks, Corey. So that leaves me, your monster of ceremonies, Bob Calhoun, and Greg Franklin of 6 Point Harness. How's it going, Greg?
It's going great, Bob. Happy to fill in and keep the lights on while all the youngins are out having the summer of their lifetimes.
Yeah, it's the summer of their lifetimes in this country that doesn't even think they're human beings.
No, far from it.
Far from it, yeah. So enjoy FDA regulations while you can, kids. It's, if you're going to eat a hot dog, it's nice to know that it's probably not poisoned. Enjoy that. Drink some water. Drink some water that doesn't have strontium 90 in it. Although, there's parts of the country where it always has had strontium 90 in it.
And get lots of sunscreen, y'all.
Yeah, get lots of it. Yeah. That's our special guest today, Floyd Webb. Let me introduce him. We're really happy to have him for so many reasons. He's the founder and curator of Blacknuss TV, that is BLACKNUSS. It's a streaming service focused on black independent filmmakers from around the world. Back in 1982, Floyd founded Chicago's influential Blacklight Cinema Film Fest and programmed it through 1996. Plus, he's an associate producer of Julie Dash's Daughters of the Dust, so you can say that Floyd has influenced Beyonce. He doesn't partake in the herb these days, but he's known to microdose.
Hey, I've influenced Beyonce twice.
Twice?
Yeah, because I was close friends with Jibril Diop Mambeti, and that picture of them on a motorcycle with the horns, with the horns, that's from his film Tukibuki.
Oh yeah, you were involved in the
famous.
You were involved.
No, I wasn't. No, I was working with Jibril Diop Mambeti at the same time I was working with Julie Dash. Actually, I chose to work on her film instead of going and working on his film.
Both are movies for stoners too. Both are trippy as fuck.
Oh yeah, you gotta see Hyenas. Hyenas is a film to definitely watch, right? So yeah.
Yeah, where can we find that film?
Find Hyenas. You know what? Go on to I think it's on Criterion actually.
Oh, fantastic!
Right, yeah. That's a crazy surrealistic kind of a movie based on a Dumorat play about this woman who gets pregnant, and these people conspire to accuse her of being a whore, and she gets kicked out of town. She comes back like 20 years later, a millionaire, and offers to give the film $1 million if they'll kill the guy who set her up to be thrown out of town.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah, and it is. I mean, it is. I mean, you have to see it because you realize we're not going to do this. We're not going to do this, and then they start thinking about it. Mm-hmm. So anyway, yeah. But anyway, I just thought I'd throw that in.
That's awesome.
We've had double influence.
Less is more today, because I think today with you, Floyd, I mean, I've had like phone calls with you that went on like an hour or longer than an hour, where we talked about like Sammy Davis Jr. having Earth, Wind, and Fire open for him in Vegas, and then we talked about Frank Zappa and Spike Lee and Julie Dash and all this stuff, and then after there was one phone call I had where we just talked about all this stuff and politics and film, and then like when we were like finally saying, guys, you were like, we should have recorded that for a podcast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It just went in so many different tangents. I think Steve Allen was brought up, like
Oh yeah. Yeah. Steve Allen and Zappa.
Yeah, we had the clip of Zappa on Steve Allen in our last episode, in the Elvis episode. Yeah. So tell us about Blacknuss. It's a network, and it's also a TV streamer.
We're a network. We do a screening program, which I use to actually promote the channel, because a lot of these films you won't see normally. You know, like these aren't in the popular. You know, it's not part of pop culture, but they exist sort of on the periphery of pop culture. You know. It's like it's like Tuki Buki was out there for years. Tuki Buki won the audience award at Cannes Film Festival back in 1972, and the film was kind of suppressed from that point, because it was a film that stepped outside of what people determine African films should be, which was village films about the pastoral, about issues in the countryside, and Mambeti decided to do a film that was sort of influenced by the French New Wave, and boy meets girl, boy on a motorcycle, trying to escape their environs, trying to leave the country and go to the mother country. It was very, very interesting, and he used so much surrealism inside of this thing. He's got like a white Tarzan character that appears in the desert. I mean, yeah, you would have to see this. So
I have. I've watched it on TCM.
Yeah.
It's a movie that straddles.
You did see it?
Yeah, It's a movie that straddles TCM, because they could show it on the Underground, or they could show it on their international film nights on Sunday. It could go in. It's so weird. It could go in either place.
Yeah, and thanks to Martin Scorsese, he's actually he's been restoring a lot of these films and putting them out there. So I wanna thank him personally for that.
So Tuki Buki, I know it's available on Criterion, or it was for a while. Is it also available on Blacknuss?
Not yet. Not yet. We're having to navigate some things, because I'm not I'm not part of pop culture, so I have to go. I got to do things on the underground way.
Now,
but legal.
And so. Tuki Buki that's Tuki.
No, Touki.
Touki.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, it is a weird. It's a weirder film than I think Top of the Heap, which is the one we're talking about today.
I think they're about equal.
Okay.
I think they're about equal. I think I mean, the only thing he doesn't have is astronauts in Tuki Buki.
Yeah. There is like kind of Tarzan kind of riffs in Top of the Heap, which we'll get to in a little bit. But you've also got a movie on Blacknuss called Treasure of the Ninja.
Treasure of the Ninja. Yes, that's my buddy William Lee. When I met William had been making Super 8 Kung Fu films and dubbing them manually. And he sent them to Hong Kong, and they couldn't believe. They said, wait a minute, these were made in Columbus, Ohio.
Wow.
William is the only person that I knew who could find 100 ninjas in the middle of Ohio. there's a scene in the film, right, where the guy's standing in the field and 100 ninjas pop up, man. I'm like, what the, it's, and he's made about 30. William Lee is still making films. Matter of fact, you should get William Lee on here. William is still making films. He's just made a new films, but he's been making these martial arts kung fu. He started out doing traditional kung fu films back in the early 80s, or I'm sorry, back in the late 70s. And he's continued, he's gone from Super 8 to making 35 millimeter films.
That is awesome.
So,
yeah. And so he's on Blacknuss, William Lee, and he's on
right.
What?
Yeah.
And what's his film again?
Treasure of the Ninja.
Treasure of the Ninja.
Treasure of the Ninja. I'm writing all these
Treasure
down.
This
is amazing treasure trove of.
Yeah, God, we need to definitely have another Floyd episode with Tuki Buki, which is from the 70s. We try to keep it from pre 1970, but I mean, if it's that obscure, or at least we should just do it, which is kind of what we're doing with Top of the Heap today. It's also because, if we hold too hard to pre-1970, it's going to be pretty pale in these film selections here. We aren't really going to have a lot of black films, African films, or African American films, or Asian American films, or Asian films.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I've been trying to find Melvin Van Peebles' first film, right, which was made, I think, was it 59? I think it was 59. Right?
Oh, wow.
That was a film he made when he had made a film when he was living in San Francisco, working as a streetcar operator.
Oh, he worked for Muni?
Yeah. Yes.
Whoa.
Yes.
I should just know that. That should just be like knowledge that comes out of my pores up here.
Yeah.
There's a photographer, real famous photographer in San Francisco, who shot him and Mario and his mom. They did like a nude portrait of them while he was working. She met him while he was a streetcar operator, and got him to pose with his family. It's online. The picture's online. Just look up Melvin Van Peebles' nude family. And it's Mario. Wait. But it's Mario. So but it's Mario. I was. Next time I talk to Mario, it's Mario, be nice to me because I got your picture and I'll text it
to you. No more Highlander 4 for you, Mario, once these pictures get out.
Mario has become such a great guy, man. He is so much like his father now. He's got that same spirit now. Back in the Highlander days, not so much. But with age comes wisdom, and he's a real, real family guy, real warm guy. Like I said, more like his dad. I was talking to Mario one time. To Melvin one time, and I said, Mario is a little bit kind of like Hollywoody, and he said, Floyd, let me tell you something. Fame makes crack look like baby powder.
Wow. Words of wisdom.
Hey everybody, we've been getting a little bit of buzz on the internets lately, and people are writing in, people are responding to the show. First, HP Mendoza, writer and star of Colma the Musical, is following us on Twitter. That's a real big Criterion Channel star right now. Colma is on the Criterion Channel. Thanks, HP. And we've also got Will McKinley. He writes for various broadcast networks such as Get TV. He's retweeted our Elvis episode and a few others, and he's always writing in with encouragement of the show. He is now featured alongside Dick Cavett and Anthony Zerbe, from the Omega Man, in the documentary Dark Shadows and Beyond, the Jonathan Frid story, which is now up for a daytime Emmy. So congrats, Will. You can watch Dark Shadows and Beyond. It's currently streaming on Freevee. And also, Chrissy, a.k.a. Rather Gauche on Twitter and Instagram, says, Old Movies for Young Stoners is Ichiban, which is Gaimanese for the best, quote unquote. Thanks, Chrissy. She follows us on both Twitter and Instagram. So if you want to be like Chrissy, if you want to be like Rather Gauche, you can follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Old Movies for Young Stoners. Just spell it all out. Things get a bit more complicated on Twitter, where you can follow us at OM4YStoners. That's OM4YStoners. And if you own that smoke shop next to the IHOP in Daly City, or you work in marketing at Tubi or Crackle, you can buy ads on this podcast right now for next to nothing. Please contact us at oldmoviesforyoungstoners@gmail.com. You can even drive by my house and toss a handful of quarters into my driveway, and I'll read your copy on this podcast. We're that desperate, folks. That's oldmoviesforyoungstoners@gmail.
Top of the Heap, written by and starring Christopher St. John.
Ain't gonna be no days like that. You're gonna have to shoot me right in my face, Mr. Black Pig.
When a black man bares his soul and tells his story, he lets it all hang out. His rage was the illness of the times.
Hey, I just got back from a trip to the moon!
Hassled by his soul brothers, with his mother dying, he can only escape to the moon.
In 1972, the suits at the Fanfare Corporation were expecting your run-of-the-mill blaxploitation flick with jive-talking pimps and vengeance-seeking hookers, when instead, producer, writer, director Christopher St. John gave them this hallucinatory drama where he stars as George Lattimer, a black beat cop in Washington, D.C., who lapses into reoccurring dreams of space travel. However, even his vivid interstellar fantasies are no escape from real-life anxieties. His badge makes him a pariah in his own community and earns him no respect from his white coworkers. His marriage is falling apart, and things aren't going that much better with his lounge singer girlfriend. And if that wasn't enough to cause a break with reality, his teenage daughter is doing drugs, and he is avoiding his mother's funeral in Alabama. Lost for decades, but now streaming on Blacknuss TV, this is Top of the Heap. Floyd, you have kind of a long history with this movie, or you have a, you were searching for it for a while. So why don't you tell us about your connection to Top of the Heap?
Well, I was friends with a documentary filmmaker by the name of St. Clair Bourne, and St. Clair was, he was a real supporter. Like I met him. He'd come to Chicago to do some documentaries on the blues for CBS. CBS used to have a documentary division, so he came here to make this thing called Big City Blues. And I met him at another screening of his, and we got to talking. And he came down to see a film that I had shot, and kind of adopted me. So they kind of pulled me into that New York film circle. So to go to St. Clair's house was to be around people like Bill Gunn would stop by the house, Melvin would stop by on his 5-mile runs, Amiri Baraka was around there. Every year he had a party, and all these people turned up. All of the documentary filmmakers and like journalists. And so St. Clair kind of pulled me into that world, because St. Clair also had this this newsletter, right? Before community newsletters were even popular. It was called Chamba Notes, and it was about black films. It was about black filmmaking, and he ran lists of like grants and scholarships and things, and who was working on what, who was going where, who was in festivals. It was the only thing out there. It was this like yellow 8 to 12 page sheet, 8.5, 11, and he had this big table in his house, right? And when I told him that I was going to start this film festival, he said, "You must find this one film, right? It's called Top of the Heap. It showed up in the theaters. It lasted about 2 weeks, and then it disappeared, and nobody could find it. Nobody could find the filmmaker. Nobody could find the film." And that was in 1982, right? And every year that I started the festival, and wait, I even had a phone number. For St. Clair, for Chris St. John, and nobody ever answered the phone, right? And this went on all during the time that I ran the Blacklight Film Festival. Then I left the country. I was working with the Rain Dance Film Festival in London and the VFM Festival, and I worked at the Zanzibar Festival, and I came back to Chicago in 2000, right? And ended up starting another program, and I started looking again when I was working for Studio Movie Grill, and we were doing monthly screenings under the title Black World Cinema, and then one day I saw this Christophe St. John. Somebody said, "You ever heard of Christophe St. John? He might be related." He was on soap operas, and so this young lady I know said, "I bet they're related." So I contacted him on Facebook, and he replied, and that's how I got in touch with Chris, and that was back in that was back in about 2010.
Wow.
Right? Yeah, and we showed the film. I got contacted because of Blacklight. Theaster Gates had started something in Chicago called the Black Cinema House, and the white director of the Black Cinema House called me up first, apologizing for being white, and saying he had been doing research on black. I'm sorry. Wait, he says, "Well, Floyd, before you come down, I'd like you to know one thing. I'm white," and I was like, "Well, does your mom know?" You know, I said, "If it's okay with your mom, it's okay with me, man." You know, so we made an arrangement to show the film there, and we were supposed to bring him. We were supposed to actually bring him to Chicago, but as things go, and as things go with these highfalutin super artists, you know, stuff just doesn't work out when it comes to that kind of stuff. Sometimes they changed all the rules after we got the film in, and that's a whole other story, you know. But yeah, so that's when we finally caught up to Chris, and we showed the film, and from there, lots of people found out about the film, and he started getting lots of invitations around the world to like screen the film, but. He still never really got any recognition. Like, they actually showed the film this past year at the Brooklyn Academy Brooklyn Academy of Music. They had a 2-week screening. They got a review in the New York Times. And the guy who reviewed it in the New York Times, he didn't even write a review. He went back and he took the old review from when the film first opened back in 1972 and said pretty much the same stupid shit.
Oh,
right?
man.
And they never contacted him. They didn't even know he was alive, so they didn't make it. And he was the producer of the film. It's under his production company name. The film is turned up on Amazon Prime, right? It's now on. I got to ask him about this too. It's on Criterion, but none of these people knew that he was alive. And I'm like, how could? If they only Googled it, especially after 2008, if they had Googled his name in the film, there's an article that comes up about the film with me in it, in the Chicago Reader. You know, it's like a substantial article about that film. You know, so we've been trying to help Chris get the deserved recognition, and because he's in his 80s now. Don't nobody want to know. I mean, you know, ageism is such an incredible thing. You know, he was intentionally deprived of a career because the film went to the Berlin Film Festival, and it won like was it an audience award, and it played in Europe for a couple of weeks. But when he came back here, he didn't tell anybody he didn't tell his white producers that the film was in the Berlin Film Festival, and they said, we weren't trying to get you to make an art film. We just wanted you to make a film with a bunch of N-words running around on the screen for 90 minutes. You're not supposed to make an art film, you know. And they disappeared the film after that. He lost control of the film. He lost control of the print, and he was asked out. But he didn't stop moving. He went on and started another film, and he went to India and shot this film called Avatar, about this guru. Who's the guru? That real popular guru back in the 70s. I think it was Rajneesh, and he went to India and like lived at the compound and stuff, and took his son, took Christophe and his wife, and he's trying to finish this film and like get that out there now, you know. So so that's the story in a nutshell.
Yeah. So you were trying to find Top of the Heap. This goes back to the 80s, really. You were
back to the 80s.
When the movie was only like 10 years old or 12 years old, and you know, because like I went back to like, you know, basically to research my intro to you, so I got everything right. And I remembered reading those Chicago Reader articles, the interview with you. There was just a Q&A with you, and then there was the article on Top of the Heap. And I like had already programmed the film for this episode, and I remembered those articles, but didn't remember they were specifically about Top of the Heap and your relation to it. Let's bring Greg in. Greg, your thoughts on Top of the Heap? What I assume this is the first time you saw it.
It is the first time I saw it, the first time I'd ever heard of it.
Did you see it stoned?
Of course, that is the criteria of this podcast. And and to be completely transparent, a lot of the movies that we've covered on this show, if have not seen them, I'm very familiar with them. This is one that was completely out of the blue to me, and I watched it totally cold. And I have to say that I freaking loved it. It is exactly the kind of movie that I like, which is a movie that combines sort of ham-fisted genre and art and statement. I love when those two things combine, when you think you're watching a low-budget film that is going to have certain genre conventions to it, and it actually goes off into creative tangents and venues. I love movies like Shot Corridor and films like that, where you think you're watching something and it ends up being something much deeper, much richer, and shows a very unexpected level of depth to it. Thought it was fascinating, the whole concept. And I remember I'm a cartoonist, and I was working on a show years ago with Wyatt Cenac that was about a cop who busted some rappers and was crestfallen that they didn't live up to the gangsta lifestyle that they had purported. And I thought that was a hilarious gimmick, and we were working on the show, and I kind of realized that it's like, hey, I suggested to him, like, what if the cop is black? It feels like it would maybe be might be more disappointed in them if they're fakers, and Wyatt said, are there black cops? I don't know. Like he did. It's like, do they have any? And which was hilarious. But yeah, it's a fascinating thing to think about in the the opportunities that are presented to black men, especially at that time, that the opportunities are to maintain the oppression, maintain the machine, basically. Like that's one of the things that he dreams about, which is escape the machine. And by virtue of dreaming about being an astronaut, it's more than the machine he's escaping, it's the entire Earth, that is the machine that he's trying to escape. And it's really fascinating to kind of connect these dots and watch this film. And I just thought that it was a fantastic film, and I'm super grateful, Floyd, that you found this film and brought it back to fore, because not only would I never have heard or seen of it, but it doesn't sound like many other people would have either.
Mm-hmm.
There's that scene too, speaking of escaping the Earth, and the movie when like it's him and his partner like are both walking on the moon, like it's his cop partner, his white cop partner. Yeah. And and like they'll look at the Earth, and it's obviously this like fake globe, like a kind of child's globe on a string. It's like this guy, it's obviously artifice. But there's that scene where him and his partner are like, it's one of those scenes where they're like cool with each other a little bit, and they're in the car and they're just sitting there eating donuts and drinking coffee or whatever, and they start talking about aliens coming to Earth, and they start yelling, "Don't come here! We've got Richard Nixon down here!" like they're
So
telling
good.
the aliens not to come. Now, one thing that one thing that interests me about it is that it is shot. It takes place in Washington D.C. And what's it's a very Washington D.C. movie that isn't like most Washington D.C. movies are like Watergate type movies where they're about like a political scandal, and that's what they're about. But the federal government or government work is so pervasive that Lattimer's fantasies still involve working for NASA. It's like he wants a better government job. He wants a job with the federal government instead of the local government.
It's got good benefits.
Right.
Because that's the only show in town in Washington, D.C. And it's like, traditionally for African Americans, that was one of the, even going back to before the Civil Rights era, that was a place where African Americans could get hired for white collar jobs, even for.
Now for some more context on this, the astronaut job, they were the new cowboys. They were going into a new frontier, right? And a real serious context about this is when Kennedy became president, he appointed a black test pilot to be an astronaut, and he put him under Chuck Yeager, who from that point proceeded to refer to this young man, Ed Dwight Jr. Ed Dwight was from Missouri. His dad was a black baseball player. He was in the black baseball leagues. He was a catcher in the league, right? And this kid dreamed of flying, right? He became a test pilot, even though he was only like 5'6", he was like barely the height that it took to become a pilot, and he became a test pilot, and he was chosen to be appointed to astronaut training under Chuck Yeager, who referred to Dwight as Kennedy's N-word, right? Everybody said he wasn't qualified, that he didn't have the experience, and he was actually drummed out of the astronaut corps when Kennedy was killed. He told me on the phone, I talked to the guy on the phone. He told me that the day that Kennedy was killed, he was out to make some hours, because like test pilots have to make flight hours every week, and they held him on the tarmac for 2 hours from the time that they heard that Kennedy got killed to the time that they heard he died. When they heard he died, they pulled him off of the runway, out of the plane, and told him he was out of the program. And then they offered him a job in Germany. Right, now get this, they offered him a job. They were going to station him in Germany as head of the German space program. They didn't have one, right? Then they offered him another job for the Canadian space program. They didn't have one. He eventually ended up leaving the Air Force when a black mechanic told him that somebody had come to him and asked this mechanic, would he be able to do something to make sure that the plane never came back? Oh. And when the kid told Ed Dwight this, he thought he was joking. But Ed said that as he got in the plane and he was letting the canopy down, about to go to the runway, he looked back and saw this kid crying. He said when he saw the kid crying, he stopped the plane and got out of it and went right in and turned in his resignation.
Oh, man.
And it got really complicated from there because they still wanted to have a black astronaut. So what they did is, but this wasn't time, right? So they drummed him out, but they had him write the qualifications for the next black astronaut, and Ed said he made it so that he had to be super Negro, right? And the funny part about this is the next guy that came along was from Chicago, lived on my block in Chicago on 23rd and State Street, grew up there. We went to the same elementary school, and he fit all of those qualifications. He was chosen to be an astronaut, and his name was Robert H. Lawrence, right? Robert H. Lawrence was brought into the astronauts program in 1967, right? And the week he was brought in, and it was all in the news, H. Rap Brown was making a speech, and he said he said they were going to lose him in space because they didn't want any black people in space. They were going to lose him. That was July 1967. December 67, he died in a plane crash, but he wasn't flying the plane. He was showing someone else. Robert H. Lawrence did the math and perfected the glide reentry for space shuttles. That's what he was doing. That was his thing. He was one who did the math for, because the space shuttle was like nothing but an aerodynamic brick,
Right.
And it was very difficult to fly and land this thing. And he was showing his superior officer how this thing, how this theory worked. And in the course of it happening, and the superior officer flying the plane, it hit the runway, bounced up, and it bounced twice. And when they were going back up, the superior officer hit the eject button. Well, this F-107 is designed to flip over because it's got two pilots. The co-pilot doesn't really fly the plane, right? So the pilot ejects, then it flips over, and it ejects the rear pilot directly down so that he doesn't crash into the pilot. So that they don't collide, right?
Right.
Well, the plane was only like 300 feet off the ground. So it ejected Robert H. Lawrence directly into the ground.
Oh man!
And this is the first time, and so it was really suspicious. Of course, he was a test pilot. Test pilots die all the time, but he wasn't flying the plane, and so that and his brother, his family, it was really ugly. All the time once he was chosen as an astronaut, he got hate mail, he got death threats, because it was like they were like, it was a place that black people weren't supposed to go, and that was 67, and in January of 68, Rat Brown made another speech in which he mentions Robert H. Lawrence again, and he says, I said that they would lose him. He didn't even get to make it into space because that's how much hatred is in this country.
Now,
for black people and black achievement.
Tell us who H. Rap Brown is, just in case actual young stoners are listening.
H. Rap Brown was in SNCC. He was in the Black Power movement. These people. There was a point where, where they were the younger people were tired of the movement of the NAACP, and they became more politically astute and more better organized, and they were working especially in the colleges, right? But they were involved in voting rights in Mississippi. So SNCC was down there registering people to vote. Way back in the mid 50s, and so Rat Brown was part of that with Stokely Carmichael and all. So that's the Black Power movement. This is the Black Power. It was like in the 60s. It was like NAACP, CORE, and SNCC. And after the death of Martin Luther King, it was the Black Panther Party. But in between that, there was also the Revolutionary Action Movement, which nobody knows about because they were really underground, And a lot of, I'm not going to say us, I'm going to say a lot of people were involved. And the good thing about the Revolutionary Action Movement is all the leadership of that group, after doing all of this effective work over 40 years, they all died in bed.
Wow.
So it pays to be underground.
Stay underground. You don't
stay underground.
You don't get shot by Chicago police when you're in bed. You just die quietly in bed. But back to Top of the Heap, there's this chilling moment in it that I want to talk about before we get into the weed recommendations. The fantasy where he comes and he's on the parade in his hometown and the streets are empty and it's really eerie, and he also has that scene with his mom, who's passed away. So there's a dream sequence with his mom, and she's sitting in sitting in a chair in the middle of the road in their hometown in Alabama, and it's almost like the scenes with Father Karras's mom in The Exorcist, and I'm like, wow, those movies are both Washington D.C. movies that aren't political intrigue films, and it's just something in the air in 1972 about this. And I just wanted to talk about that because it's like as scary as anything in a George Romero movie, you know, and it takes you by surprise in the movie. It's a dark film, you know, sometimes a bleak film, definitely by the end, but that scene, it's like all of a sudden becomes a horror film.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you about the background to that particular scene, right? This is one of the conversations he was having with a producer, complaining about the type of film he was making, right? These crazy scenes, you know, running through the brick wall, you know, that's not, you know, this thing with the mom. He said that the guy had come into his trailer when they were preparing to shoot that scene, and basically tore him a new asshole. And they were going to fire him. They were going to do all of this stuff. They were doing everything they could to make him leave, to make him quit. And he said that when he came out, he was devastated by this conversation he had. And when he was talking, and when he walked up and they started the scene, as they were preparing the scene, and he leaned over to the woman that was playing his mother, she was whispering into his ear because she had heard this thing. And she was whispering. She says, "Don't you quit, don't you quit. Don't let these people stop you. Keep going, keep going." And it's like, and when you see that scene, it's got a resonance that, and you don't know where the resonance is coming from, but when he told me that story about what had happened, you know, you really get all of that, all of the spirit of that, you know, from you know, that energy that she gave him just comes out, you know, with the little dance, you know, with the little sort of I don't know what to call the dance. It was sort of almost a Haitian voodoo, right? Almost like something out of Haitian voodoo. If you've ever seen dance, if you've ever seen any of Maya Daren's films, right? If you've seen any of Maya Daren's films, right? What is it? Oh man, I can't remember. But anyway, Maya
Meshes of the Afternoon.
No, well, she made Meshes of the Afternoon, but the other one was it was something of the god, Horses of the Gods. It was about the you know, it's like, you know, the voodoo subject is a horse to be ridden by the Loa, right? And you get that feeling from that scene. I mean, that's really, it stopped the whole movie. That scene for me just stopped the whole movie, right?
Yeah, like all of a sudden it kind of becomes Ganja and Hess for a minute.
Yeah, definitely. You know, this, you know, that deep spirituality just, you know, that it fit where, you know, you would think it would be out of place, but it fits so well because of because of, you know, the turmoil. You know, the turmoil he's like thrown into. I mean, this whole thing with like being a cop, you know, being a cop, being a black cop, you know, you get it from the black community, you get it from the white cops, you know, and he's caught in the middle, and of course he wants to escape.
Yeah, well, the white cops try to kill him in the movie, or you
Yeah,
know, in that bus
yeah.
scene, it's like totally,
Yeah.
like, you know, how little changes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, so
I know.
that was something. Yeah, that was something.
But yeah, the mom.
I mean, when he told me that story, I mean, he just came out of nowhere, and he just told me. He says, "I never told you this before," you know, because we would talk periodically on the phone, and every now and then he kind of remembers something, and he just pops it out there. Like, wow, man, it's like, what are we gonna do with this, you know? And so anyway, yeah.
No, I was gonna. I'm sorry. I noticed that there were 3 scenes in the film in which white people are being racist, and when confronted with the fact that he is indeed a cop, are extremely apologetic. They're just like, "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." And it happens. You know, one time it's like, okay, then it happens again. And then the third time with the taxi driver guy, who's a great actor, by the way, he in turn is just like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry." that I just found it interesting, and I thought it was you know, maybe one area where I was like, well, I don't remember whites being that apologetic about racism, you know, like and so in that one aspect of it. But then again, it was always
it was the 1970s. It was the early 70s, and it was just post civil rights at that point.
Yeah,
you know, like Like there was a different attitude for a lot of white people back then. You know, people were actually questioning themselves in a whole lot of ways, and a cop was a symbol of authority. You know, and at least the white citizenry would make way for like a black cop, even though they might be disrespectful. But the cop, but the taxi driver's got his, he's got his whole medallion to worry about at that point. You know what I mean?
Of course.
He gets a ticket. He gets too many tickets, or he gets written up and have to go to court. He could lose his license. So of course he's going to be apologetic.
Yeah, it's not conscience. It's just it's fear. It's like, okay, he's black, but he could still bust me or write me a ticket or hassle me. He could pull me over every time he sees me with a broken tail light.
Right. Yeah. So. Yeah.
It was very interesting, but I noticed that fear didn't stop them from being racist in the first place. It was
for a couple of minutes. I mean, remember the cop. Remember when he was on the bus. I mean, when he was chasing the guy off the bus, and the cop got him. The cop wasn't that apologetic, really. You know what I mean? It takes a. It's like they want extra proof. A lot of times.
Right.
They don't get the proof until after that first bullet. So it's like
followed by 80 bullets now.
Right.
80. Yeah. Like the guy's just driving an Uber and 80 bullets.
Right.
Yeah.
What the hell? What the
let's just empty the clip. Yeah. There was a fire seal on it. The ammo.
Yeah.
Depot, right.
It's interesting though. It's that escaping of the white machine, right? And how that even. That was the thing that I kept thinking was, it didn't feel like the world of NASA and the astronaut world would be any necessarily less racist than the police world.
Right.
And that extends to him escaping the ship itself in his fantasy. The ship itself, he's floating in space. And eventually taking off the white spacesuit, getting rid of that, and I love the symbolism of that. I love it when movies like this, despite the odds, and there was no big budget here, and not to in any way defend the producers of this film at all, but I could maybe understand them questioning why do we need a gigantic telegram on a brick wall for him to punch through. I could understand that from if they have a certain expectation for it, but I'm so glad that he persevered and that he listened to that actress playing his mom, and this is just a fantastic movie. It's great, and thank you, Floyd, for bringing it back out into the open.
Yeah, one last anecdote. Chris's brother was a cop. And Chris's brother was a cop who got killed. And doing this film was sort of a mourning and a homage to his brother and the actual struggles of his brother being a cop. And I think maybe some of his guilt in terms of maybe how he treated his brother as a cop.
Wow, yeah.
And so, and that's where the film rises from. You know what I mean? There's just it's a mourning.
I hear them outside.
They're coming for you, Floyd.
Yeah. Hey, man, downtown Chicago, man. This has become really, really, really nuts down here. But yeah, so it's like a blues poem in the end.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's a blues poem in the end.
Yeah, you do feel that it is an elegiac movie. And you don't necessarily know why, so that's explained now, Floyd. Thanks for that.
Now, for the people that are just a little bit too stoned, you need to define elegiac.
I made him define H-Rap Brown, and now I got it's funerary, it's mournful, it's like a wake.
There we go.
Yeah. Hey, Greg, what weed would you smoke with this?
It's more like what weed did I smoke with this, and that is, shout out to my daughter Felina, who's a regular on this show. She did leave her apparatus here on her last visit, and so I just smoked her weed, which was a Stizzy pod that was a birthday cake flavor, and you can tell that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. We both have very childish tastes when it comes to things, and we both love birthday cake. So that's what I smoked. It is a hybrid. I think that a hybrid is good. It's not going to make you overly paranoid, although the film itself might make you a bit paranoid. So I felt that was very much what I would go for, and what I would recommend is sort of an indica dominant hybrid.
So I went with Alien OG from Kaliva,
Wow.
which has a 27.8% THC level, which is pretty high. Which I think you might want to go with a higher THC level for this movie, and it is a heavy indica, which I'd also recommend for this. I think you want to lean on the indica for this movie. It's not really an up sativa movie, but it does give you a body rush, like a body high, and it opens the synapses of your brain just right to receive St. John's film here, to take in a movie like Top of the Heap. Yeah, it is a heavy indica, and you'll need that to cope with the movie's darker moments. And I do suggest, smoking it right before you start the movie or as you start the movie, and then hitting it again halfway through just to get that rush back. At the 45-minute mark, you should definitely hit the pipe again, folks. And
one reason that it's a good stoner movie, and I want to give a special shout out to the amazing editing of this film, and the way that the flashbacks, there will be just these memories that come in just these sharp, shards, and they almost penetrate his brain like broken glass. And it was very subjective, very well done. I don't remember seeing a lot of movies of the genre or the era having that kind of sort of impressionistic or expressionistic sort of. It's very felt, and I don't know the name of the editor, but he did a fantastic job, and it is a true stoner film because of him too.
Top of the Heap is now streaming on Blacknuss TV. Go to blacknuss.tv, that's BLACKNUSS.tv, to learn how to start your free trial. It's only $39.99 a year. There's lots of great stuff in there. Like we said, Treasure of the Ninja. If you are an old movie diehard, you want to see stuff in black and white, there's Mark of the Hawk with Eartha Kitt and Sidney Poitier, which I definitely want to check out. A lot of great stuff in there. So that's blacknuss.tv. Sorry to say this, Floyd, but it's also available free with ads on Tubi, and it's part of Criterion Channel's Beyond Blaxploitation series, but check it out on Blacknuss.
We needed support. We're building up towards doing original content, so we can so we can do original content of this kind of stuff. You know what I mean? To do, some things that are kind of, outside of the pop culture space.
And now the story of the fantastic adventure that befalls mankind's most daring crew of space explorers.
Not a sound. Not even the hum of an insect. Is this a dead planet?
Landing on an unknown planet, they are captured by long-limbed beauties. When they say, "Take me to your leader," and they take them to a creature like this, you know they're on planet Venus. And the queen of outer space is Zsa Zsa Gabor. The most talked about woman in the world knows what she wants on Venus, too.
Then we're the only men on the whole planet?
Yes.
Wow.
After being ensnared by a tractor beam, the plucky crew of a spaceship become the prisoners of a hideously scarred galactic monarch armed with a death ray that is capable of destroying entire planets. Well, this might sound a little familiar. We don't have lightsabers, Wookiees, or cutesy droids here. Instead, we've got lunk-headed He-Man astronauts man-hating space babes with Forbidden Planet surplus ray guns, and Zsa Zsa Gabor in skin-tight lame and chewing the scenery in an over-the-top performance that elevates this sexist claptrap into a camp classic that inspired drag shows for years after its 1958 release. This is Queen of Outer Space. Now this movie is Floyd's choice. This is his fault. And, there was a point where I'm trying to put this episode together, and I'm like, oh, Floyd, it's only on Daily Motion. Can we go with something a little more available? And then I realize I'm, like, arguing over film programming with a legendary film programmer, and there's just a point where, like, shut up, Bob. Shut up.
Yes.
Just Floyd wants Queen of Outer Space. Floyd gets Queen of Outer Space.
Okay, Queen of Outer Space. Here's the reason I chose this film. Okay, so I'm living in Mississippi. I am 6 years old. What is this? Yeah, six years old. And I'm interested in science fiction films, right? And I've been back and forth to Chicago. And back then, early television had lots of science fiction on. Crazy stuff, Commando, Cody, and it was really interesting with all of these, and they all looked alike too, right? They all had this pulp science fiction cover look. Mm-hmm. All of the spacemen wore these uniforms with the strange shoulders and the little pads on their shoulders and things. The one-piece jumpsuit kind of a thing, proto astronaut looking, mm-hmm. looking outfits, and the day I saw that film is the thing that always stuck in my mind, right? Because I'm in Mississippi, I'm in Sardis, Mississippi. It's 100-degree day, and I gotta go to the movies. But I've been living in Chicago, and I come back down for the summer. This is 3 years after Emmett Till, so I'm really restricted in what I can do on a day-to-day basis. But on Saturday afternoons, we go to the movies. That's the ritual in Mississippi. Didn't have any television, or if it was, you only had one or two channels, so movies were a thing. And the matinee movie was the best time to go, because you got these like serials. You would get a serial, a 30-minute serial, and you get a feature film, and it's like the thing that always, every time I think about that movie, I think about finding out I couldn't go through the front door and had to go around the back on a 100-degree day at noon on a metal fire escape stairs. I remember how it burned my hands. You couldn't touch, it's like you had to walk straight up because you could feel it through your Converses. You could feel the heat through your Converses as you walked up the stairs. If you touched the wall was, you could fry an egg on the wall. But when I got through that door, the place that I was restricted to was the coolest place in the theater, the balcony, next to the air conditioner, right? So, and I was just going, and suddenly I said, like, there's an upside to this, right? And the movie was just like fascinating, Like, I do believe Elon Musk has spent a lot of time watching Queen of Outer Space, right? And because look at every time there's a launch, we get like a big public viewing of the launch every time, of it going up and coming down. These vertical launches, it's like here we are 60 years later, and spaceships are still launched the same way, right? Yeah. But the thing that we never imagined was that they would actually land vertically too. And Elon Musk must have seen this movie and said, yes, I have to solve this problem of how to bring the rockets back to ground without having to go out to the ocean, right?
And they even look more like a dick now.
Yeah.
Even more
than the 50s one. The base.
Yeah, way more. This is remember spaceships. This was the age of fins on spaceships.
Oh yeah.
We didn't lose the fins on spaceships until Marvel came along. Until we saw Galactus, when Galactus and his minions came to town in the Fantastic Four, right? Now we begin to see these these like bits of junkyard hardware spaceships, you know. But up until that, all of the science fiction books, all of the Superman and Batman things that had spaceships in it, everything had a fin until Galactus and the Fantastic Four, you know.
That was the style.
Yeah.
Big
so,
fins.
You know, and that's what it was. Plus,
big
you know,
boobs,
the
big
whole
fins.
thing, and of course, being a young man, I'm still trying to understand like all these and all women's planet. You know, I'm in like pre-puberty at this point. You know what I mean? Like way pre-puberty. But you know, but that woman, Zsa Zsa Gabor in the ant mask, you know, with the little antenna.
No, Zsa Zsa's not in the ant mask. She's
which one is she? I'm
she's
sorry.
like the rebel scientist. She's like the good
Oh
person.
yes. I'm sorry. I get it mixed up.
Confusing. Like I watched the movie twice, kind of like once with it on in the background and once in preparation for this, like in the last 2 weeks that we were planning the episode. And you keep, writing the copy. I keep wanting to say Zsa Zsa Gabor is the Queen of Outer Space, and spoiler, she only becomes that at the end. But throughout she's like a scientist, and she's going around in her pearls and her diamonds, like in her lab, her lab that's all like this kind of 50s bachelor pad lab, even though it's all women. You know what's crazy is that trope. Like that trope of the planet of women, which is usually Venus, is like. I mean, it's in so many movies, and they're all.
Was this the
50s.
First?
No,
was this the first?
Catwoman of the Moon is from 53. Abbott and Costello Go to Mars has this trope where they're supposed to go to Mars, they end up on Venus, and it's all man-hating babes there in skimpy skirts, like, and they've wiped out all the men, or all the men have died from disease.
Feminist futurism. That's what it was.
Like male anxiety, which is really guiding our Supreme Court right now over women not really needing us. There's Catwoman of the Moon, Fire Maidens from Space, Missile to the Moon, and Queen of Outer Space, and there's even a Star Trek episode with this trope in it, which is Spock's brain, which, the men are all these kind of cavemen slaves of these babes in mini skirts, and, they take Spock's brain to run their computer. It's considered the worst episode of classic Star Trek, but I mean, it's highly entertaining. It's like somehow Ed Wood ghost wrote an episode of Star Trek, and I like Spock's brain. Like, there's way boring episodes of especially in season 3 of original Star Trek, of classic Trek, and the original series. And like Spock's brain is not the worst episode. Spock's brain is as entertaining as Queen of Outer Space. It's just space junk. Enjoy it. Sex is space junk, but space junk nonetheless. But yeah, they just kept on doing that. And the director of this, Edward Barnes, he's like he directed another movie like this called World Without End, where it's like kind of a Planet of the Apes thing, where the astronauts, will come back to the future, and civilization is ended, and there's nothing but old men running everything, which this is sounding familiar too. There's nothing but old men running thing, and then hot future babes, like are the young women, and of course the spacemen, the square-jawed American spacemen, need to show the worth of men to these women. Another bit of trivia too on this movie is it has like a really, really big script writing pedigree. Like, you would expect this movie to be Day the Earth. Ben Hecht wrote the original treatment for it, the original story, and it was just this like joke of a thing, like, those women drivers, am I right? What if they ran the world? And it's this kind of sexist joke he made into a space thing. And then Charles Beaumont wrote the finished script, and he's the same guy who wrote The Intruder from episode 1, Roger Corman's Klan movie, Roger Corman's statement on racism in America, and we covered that in the very first episode of Old Movies for Young Stoners. And he also wrote some of the best Twilight Zone episodes, and wrote the scripts to a few of the Roger Corman, Poe, Vincent Price, Edgar Allan Poe movies. I think he wrote the script to Pit and the Pendulum. I don't have his IMDb in front of me.
What did Ben Hecht write?
Well, Well,
everything.
Ben Hecht, Ben Hecht wrote this like World War II kind of propaganda film to encourage black folks to join the military, called the Negro Soldier with Frank Capra. You know? And he was like really involved in civil rights. You know, in the 20s, he was like organizing campaigns against Ku Klux Klans. You know, he was deeply involved in that with artists. You know, he wrote this thing about Burt Williams, this black vaudevillian and silent film actor. You know, he was really involved in like human rights, and he was a Jewish activist. He was he became a large part of the American Zionist movement. You know, and
he wrote this crap.
Yeah, no,
yeah.
No, it's even crazier than that. Like, there's not a script from the golden age of Hollywood, from the 30s and 40s.
The front page. You got to do the front page.
Yeah, the front page is like what he's best known for. But everything from Gone with the Wind, The Sun Also Rises, Hitchcock's Rope. I mean, it passed through his hands, and he either punched up the dialogue or wrote a draft of it. He wrote the script to His Girl Friday, which of course is also a remake of the front page. He worked a lot with Howard Hawks. He worked a lot with Hitchcock. He wrote the script of Notorious. He worked a lot with David O. Selznick. So he also, like, Gone with the Wind, you know, he's like, I think he's credited on Gone with the Wind. And, you know, for better or worse. So yeah.
He was,
and Queen from Outer Space.
And Queen,
Queen of Outer Space.
and let's not forget, he was a war correspondent in Berlin, working for the Daily News. He was in Chicago for a while, right?
Wow.
And, you know, he had such a wide experience as a writer.
Right.
You know, but that and it's especially seeing how deeply involved in civil rights and in and all of this all of the social justice activism.
Right.
It's interesting he would write Queen of Outer Space, but hey, what do you do for money? You know what I mean?
Totally. This must have been enough of a trope for the female planet to inspire the parody film that I remember, which is Amazon Women on the Moon, which came out in the 80s and I think was a John Landis movie, and had starred a lot of people. It's got the, you know, it's Amazon Women on the Moon, and it's probably uses some of the same Ben Hecht lines in it, you know, and also has I believe a cameo by Russ Meyer in there as well.
Ooh. Yeah, the Landis thing. It also has William Blackula Marshall. Like he's one of the video pirates, and it's like, a bounty of laser discs. Yeah, like he leads the video pirates, and it's on the high seas.
Oh, man.
And there's a movie based on his life called Gaily Gaily that was directed by Norman Jewison in 1969 and starring Beau Bridges, which I've never seen.
Ben Hecht.
You know?
Yeah, he directed and wrote like a movie that, when it's available, will definitely be on Old Movies for Young Stoners, called Spectre of the Rose. And it's this weird ballet noir. And all the dialogue, he would write these movies like Spectre of the Rose from 46. That's like a movie where he's unleashed, because he's usually like punching up scripts for Selznick or Hawks or somebody, sometimes getting credit. He's co-writing, and then this is like, you know, he had this big name because people, even the stuff he's not credited on, people knew. And I mean, the stuff he is credited on, he co-wrote the adaptation of Wuthering Heights. Gunga Din. I mean, it just goes on. Like I said, almost every movie from the golden age of Hollywood, Ben Hecht has his fingerprints on it. At some point, somebody said, "Ben, why don't you work on this?" And you know, so I mean, just a towering figure, script writing figure for better and worse. You know, considering Gone with the Wind. But Spectre of the Rose, it's like this weird vampire noir. There's a lot of dialogue about vampires in it, and it's just really trippy and weird and bizarre. You know, like
was
I said,
that shown on Noir Alley?
I don't think Eddie's ever shown it. I talked to him about it, and the reason I know, what led me to that movie was it's in my book, Murders That Made Us. Is there was that flower grower in the 40s who was he was like butchered up and left in flower boxes behind the Paramount Theater in San Francisco, and it was showing Spectre of the Rose. And there's even a Herb Cain column, which Herb Cain was like our big columnist in San Francisco through the 90s, really.
Yeah, your Stud Sturkle.
Yeah, or what's the guy in Chicago who called Jerry Brown Governor Moonbeam, Floyd? The big columnist there.
Oh my God.
Royko. He was like our version of
Mike Royko.
Mike Royko. He even wrote about it, like the irony of it, that he was left chopped up behind the theater showing the guy whose name was he was called Spanny Lopez, and
he was chopped up behind something too.
They chopped him up and put him in the boxes that he shipped his carnations in, or they shipped roses.
They said the same thing happened to Countdown Team, man.
So he's left there with Spectre of the Rose is playing. So I write about it in my book. The movie is trippy and weird, and it's got this, in San Francisco anyway, in the 40s, it's got this very, very dark history behind it. But heck.
Wow.
But heck, and then the finished script is by Beaumont, who wrote The Howling Man, which is one of the best episodes of the original Twilight Zone, and number 12 Looks Just Like You. And we talked about him a lot because he wrote The Intruder with Shatner, the Shatner racist drama, where Shatner, so we talked about that in episode 1. So this movie should be, by the script writing talent, should be Forbidden Planet or Day the Earth Stood Still, but it's Queen of Outer Space, and that might be because Edward Behrens, we were talking about him. He directed Bowery Boys Meet the Monsters, Three Stooges Meet Hercules. He directed a shit ton of Stooges shorts. A lot of them was Shemp, a lot of the Shemp episodes. He got an Oscar nomination for the Bowery Boys movie High Society, and that was accidental because it came out right before the Bing Crosby Grace Kelly movie High Society. So somebody at the Academy fucked up and sent this guy the Oscar nomination certificate, like, for this Bowery Boys movie. So that movie, at least for a while till they rescinded it, it's like Hunts Hall and Skip Gorsey, like Leo Gorsey, running around like throwing pies at society matrons, or whatever the hell happens in it. This guy, Queen of Outer Space really is a Stooges short that's taken where everybody's taking it seriously, Gil Favor, Clint Eastwood's boss from Rawhide is the captain of the Spacemen, and they're all very serious, but it has a very Stooges short ending. I mean, it totally ends like a Stooges short. And I'm going to say this before I turn it back to you guys. I've talked too much, but it's probably the only movie that women would like it more with the Stooges in it. It would actually, its rating with feminists would improve if the Stooges showed up. I am regretful that Felina couldn't make it, or we're missing Felina here, because she would definitely be giving us the stink eye right now. The stank eye would be on all of us men for watching this movie and promoting it.
She might not remember it, but we did watch this when she was probably 15, or 16 years old. We did watch this movie. It came on TCM or something, and we watched it. And she was very critical of the sexism in the film at the time.
The 1950s.
Oh yeah, exactly.
The 1950s. But Ben Heck. So I found Ben Heck's autobiography free online at archive.org. Right. Child of the Century.
Yeah, I see you put it in the chat.
Yeah, but it's 600 pages, so watch out.
Well, I mean,
did Stephen King write it?
Well, I mean, he did work on so many movies, and for every studio. He wasn't just one of those guys grinding out at Warner Brothers or RKO. Everybody wanted this guy, and I mean, he's got. Let's see.
I know the name. I just wasn't aware of him that much. I've definitely heard the name though.
Yeah.
And the fact that if he wrote on everything, I guess that includes Queen of Outer Space.
And The Outlaw, Greg. He's got uncredited on The Outlaw. Another weird sex kind of sexist film. Any thoughts on Queen of Outer Space, Greg, and its kind of Stooges DNA?
Oh no, I just find it entertaining, and there's a lot of movies like this where it's just as entertaining with the sound down and putting on a record. It's just as good. I don't know. Maybe I'm missing out on the sparkling Ben Hecht dialogue, but I just love the visuals of this. It's classic, mid-century, modern aesthetic. It's of course all the women are gorgeous. They are the human actress equivalent of those giant Finn cars, and they're got great structural integrity to those outfits, and things were built to last back then.
Lots
yes.
of Bunny Yeager pinups running around with ray guns.
Like
Betty Page looking gals. Oh,
you guys didn't mention Dave Willock, man. Dave Willock was in another Chicago guy too, right?
Oh yeah.
And he was real famous when I was a kid for this. He had a series where he had a bunch of monkeys. He was like he had a bunch of monkeys living in his house. I remember that face, man. There's some strange characters here. So he's from Chicago, born in 1909. And did theater here, but did a lot of television, man. He was what else did he do? He was on the Jack Carson show, if anybody remembers that. I know I don't. That's right. It was from 1943 to 1949, right?
Okay.
But he did, all of these comedy things. I mean, there was this group of stock actors in early television. I didn't get introduced to television until no. But it was way before you guys. It was but I remember we had our little, our little vacuum tube television,
right?
With the 15-inch screen, right? That only came on after 6 o'clock, and
right.
And it went off at 12:30 with the Indian head test pattern.
Yes.
After the national anthem, and they fitted as much stuff in there as they could between 6 and midnight. But it was on all day, everything from Bozo. But this is how I got introduced to media, was through early television, which was way better than television now, because there was less space for a bunch of shit. So they were very careful. But I was trying to find the name of the TV series that he was on with these monkeys.
With the monkeys? Well, I know there is a monkey featured very prominently in the parody, the Amazon Women on the Moon parody. There's a pet monkey that the kind of goofy Italian member of the crew has, who wears a little spacesuit. It's a monkey in a little tiny spacesuit.
I think that's there's a George Powell movie, Conquest of Space, with lung-headed 50s guys and a Brooklynese guy going into space, and I think there's a monkey in that movie. And there's one in Robinson Crusoe on Mars. That movie, there's
Robinson Crusoe on Mars.
Yeah.
That was one of my favorite matinee films too.
I haven't watched it in years, but another thing about the movies with planets of beautiful space babes, whether it's the moon or Venus, is they always have a guy getting attacked in a cave by a really unconvincing spider. Missile to the Moon, Catwoman of the Moon, Queen of Outer Space. There's a fake spider attacking somebody.
Right.
It's just it's part of it. It's like, okay, we got a planet of space babes, but there's deadly spiders. And that, the thought is, I think, for the men, is that the sight of the spiders will drive the space babes back into the men's arms. Which is what the hope is psychologically in Ben Hecht and Charles Beaumont's minds, and the other people who wrote this crap over and over again. It is.
Is that sort of a metaphor as well to like getting, trapped in a web, or something? Is there some kind of like anti-female panic kind of buried in there?
There probably is, and or they had a spider puppet, a big spider, and they just needed to reuse it over and over again. Like, oh, we made a bunch of mock-ups for Tarantula, and Clint Eastwood only napalmed one of them. So, well, we're gonna just keep you throwing this. We're gonna have a bunch of stagehands standing behind a styrofoam rock, and they're gonna throw this spider at a guy. And that's this is a movie why Stanley Kubrick destroyed all the props of 2001, because in 1956 Forbidden Planet, they made Forbidden Planet, and then Robbie the Robot and those ray guns and those spacesuits, the uniforms, they just turn up in these kind of crappier and crappier movies, and these B and Z movies. And that was MGM for Forbidden Planet was MGM's big sci-fi epic of the 50s, and they just rented out the costumes later or sold them to Western Costume, and the props turn up in Twilight Zone episodes and Lost in Space episodes. So when Kubrick made 2001 for MGM, he's like, I don't want Roger Corman getting a hold of these spaceships, so he just had them all destroyed. And that's why when you go to the Kubrick exhibit, it was up here in San Francisco and it was down there in LA, you want to see those ships, but they had to recreate all that stuff for 2010 because he destroyed it. He was like, he knew that if he let MGM just hang on to it, that they were just going to rent it out to, Battle Beyond the Stars and crap from the 70s and 80s. And,
Smart.
Yeah, all those cool spacesuits that he had made were just going to turn up and, I don't know what. He was just, he knew Roger Corman.
Roger Corman would have made good use of it.
He would have. They would have been okay. Good use. Some of my favorite movies would have had some of those reused props, but he saw what they did with Forbidden Planet over there and the respect they had for it. He's just like, nope, not for me. But Greg, what kind of weed would you smoke to get you in the mood for Queen of Outer Space?
I think I would recommend. I don't remember what weed I smoked back in the day when I saw this, but I would definitely recommend a strong indica heavy weed, something like you just want to melt into the couch and let the beauty of the sets, the beauty of Zsa Zsa, the horror of sexism, everything just wash all over you and not think too much about it. I think that's really the key to enjoying a stoned screening of Queen of Outer Space.
Yeah, there is one thing before I get into my weed recommendations, which are in conflict with yours a little bit. But we didn't talk too much about Zsa Zsa, which, we should talk about her a little bit more. And, preparing for Felina to be in this episode, I read like a book about the Gabors, and I read Zsa Zsa's autobiography. And one thing, do I have it here? Finding Zsa Zsa by Sam Stagg, and I think he might be a homosexual man. I'm not sure. He's written books all about Eve and Sunset Boulevard, but he makes a case for this as it's this camp classic, and at least in the gay male community, there's those screenings of it at the Castro in the 90s, and also the influence on drag shows. Zsa Zsa's like a very, very key figure in drag shows, and I just kind of watching it as straight guys, it's just, we think of camp as just haha, it's funny, and don't think about that gay aspect to it. And so my weed recommendation, I'm saying go sativa, and that's partially because that's all there was in the 80s when I would watch these movies on Cinemax or TMT. So for Queen of Outer Space, for the Queen, you need a royal strain of weed, so I went with Royal Cherry Diesel by Key. That's Royal Cherry Diesel by Key. I said it again because Greg's laughing at my lines, which is a good thing. It is a hybrid weed strain, but it seems to be sativa dominant to me because when I smoke it and watch Queen of Outer Space, I giggle through the whole thing at the inane dialogue, at Zsa Zsa coming out going, "I hate that Queen," which was like the big laugh line in kind of gay themed screenings of this. You know, it gives me that kind of like, you know, I want to watch this shit and laugh through the whole thing. So don't smoke the brain damage weed for Top of the Heap. You need to damage your brain for Top of the Heap. Like, that was different. This only has a 21% THC level, but yeah, you'll want a weed that will make you laugh for Zsa Zsa folks, and the Royal Cherry Diesel is the one I went with.
I mean, you really can't go wrong.
Yeah,
You know,
just be stoned.
Just be stoned.
Yeah.
It's kind of a prerequisite. Like, what you don't want is to be steely-eyed and sober watching Queen of Outer Space. That is a bad scenario.
You know, there's an argument to be made too for, like, you know, I bet they did smoke some jazz cigarettes writing and producing this film, but maybe they didn't. Maybe we should just be going with like some booze, maybe like some Smirnoff vodka. You know, I know that you kids out there listening, if you youngins, you millennials and younger are listening, that you like your fancy bourbon, you like your bourbon that costs $80 a bottle, and your tequila that costs $80 a bottle. But I'd say go with Beam on the Rocks for this, or Smirnoff on the Rocks if you're more of a vodka person, you know. So but you know, if you're gonna hit the hooch for this, you got to have a few people around. You got to all be you got to all be as drunk as director Edward Barnes when he was filming this movie, and you know, just you got to hear the ice clinking in the glasses from everybody, and waiting for Zsa Zsa to come and to steal the show. So there's an argument for just getting wasted like 50s people and smoking Marlboros and you know, just drinking straight fucking booze out of the bottle.
Sark.
Cuddy. It's a Cuddy movie. You know, Cuddy Sark has the ship on it. You're taking a perilous journey into space. You should drink a perilous scotch, a mid-shelf, low-shelf scotch.
Wow.
Rosie, come here, say that. We got to get Rosie's got a recommendation. Just a second.
Hi, Rosie.
Hey,
Rosie.
Champagne, darling.
Champagne.
Must be
Smart.
Rosie.
Yes. Yeah. There you go, champagne. Yeah, if you're smoking weed, watching Queen of Outer Space, definitely pop the cork on a bottle of Moet while you're doing it for Zsa Zsa. Pour one out for Zsa Zsa. She slapped a cop. How can we not talk about it? She slapped an LA cop and parlayed it into a book deal.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's pretty iconic.
Fuck the police. Zsa Zsa forever.
That's right.
Okay.
Zsa Zsa riding gangster,
Yeah.
Exactly. She knew all cops are bastards.
Yeah. But hey, one more thing. Right?
One more thing.
The number of women, the number of women in this film, right? The number of women standing around. It looks like it's a producer. Some producer made a deal, right? For a promise he made for, I'm going to get you in the movies, baby.
Oh, man.
This was it. This was the one, right?
It's
like, because I was sitting there going like, all these women stand around in Hollywood waiting. They don't make this many movies with this many women. I'd never seen a movie with that many women in it, right?
Oh, man.
That's true.
You're so right. It is like the casting couch horror show. Like, they all think they're going to be Zsa Zsa. They end up saying, Bacino with their Forbidden Planet ray guns. At the guy who was Clint Eastwood's boss in Rawhide. And, you know.
Yeah. Will Favor, that's right.
Gil Favor. Eric Fleming was his name. I read Zsa Zsa's book hoping that she had an affair with him and would say how crappy he was in bed. That's really what I was looking for there. She just said he was a professional. you know.
Tell me, so Was this the only lead role she had in films? Did she have a lead role in any other films?
She's in Moulin Rouge. I think like in the Nicole Kidman part from the Baz Luhrmann one. She got great notices for Moulin Rouge. John Huston directed. I think is Peter Cushing in that. I think Peter Cushing has a role in that. She does have some decent film parts, and but she started. Like her sister, Ava Gabor, was like a hit on Broadway and was in some plays on Broadway. And
Green Acres.
Yeah, later Green Acres. But Zsa Zsa was like, she was married to George Sanders, who plays like this frightful cad in so many 40s and 50s films. And I think Ava also married George Sanders, so he really was that guy. And he was kind of like mentally abusive to Zsa Zsa, like always just leaving her at home while he goes and films a movie. It wouldn't take he's off in England. And then his brother... what was his brother's name? He wasn't Sanders because they didn't want the world to know they were brothers. He was a Cat People. Sorry. Anyway, his brother was like on some show called like The Bachelor's Corner, which was this kind of reality call-in show where people would ask for relationship advice. And they must have been taping on the 4th of July weekend because he needed somebody to fill in. And he called Zsa Zsa, who was just sitting in their mansion in Beverly Hills alone, doing nothing, buying diamonds on credit. And she showed up and she was just Zsa Zsa-ing all over it, and she became a huge hit on the show because she was just giving her, oh darling, you should make your man buy you pearls. I mean, she probably sold a lot of jewels around the world, which was how the Gabor family got its money in Hungary. Was they had some diamond selling businesses.
So Bob, she was in Nightmare on Elm Street 3? Really?
Oh, Dream Warriors? She's in fucking Dream Warriors?
She's in Dream Warriors.
Dude, I need to watch Dream Warriors again. That's my favorite one, too, and it's probably because Zsa Zsa's in it, and I just kind of forgot.
Isn't she in Touch of Evil, too?
Is that Zsa Zsa or Ava?
She is.
Let's,
I think she's in Touch of Evil.
No, I don't. Maybe that was Ava.
Yeah, that's the problem. Is you could start. We're in a danger zone. There's also Magda is running around. So, yeah.
Magda, the Gabor sisters. They were like the Kardashians before the Kardashians.
They totally were, and they were kind of more entertaining. They also fled Nazi Germany.
They're more talented.
Yeah, and they slapped cops. And is she in Touch of Evil? I'm just gonna do this.
I'm looking at.
Yes, she is in Touch of Evil. She is in Touch of Evil.
She is in Touch of Evil.
Yeah,
hold on.
Yeah, but
I'm sitting here looking.
And that would have been after. That would have been after Queen from Outer
Space.
No, it's the year before, I think, or the same year, maybe the same year.
She's the strip club owner.
Yeah, that's right.
Interesting.
Oh, same year as Queen of Outer Space. So she's in.
So she was on a roll that year, huh?
She was on a roll, and she started in television as just giving this kind of inane relationship advice, and people just thought she was hilarious, and so that launched her into a movie career. And Ava was coming up at the time. There's a lot of sibling rivalry there between the Gabor sisters, because there's also Magda, who's kind of the forgotten Gabor. They were just kind of tearing it up. And Floyd's right. They were the Gabor sister. They were the Kardashians. Reading Zsa Zsa's autobiography, which is in the living room, and I'm not going to go get it, but that autobiography from the 90s is like, it reads like Stan Lee was her ghostwriter. I swear to God. Like she's like, I have the blood of Attila the Hun and Genghis Khan flowing through my veins. Like there's parts of it. I read parts of it to Rosie, and I'm like, is this an autobiography? Is this a memoir, or is this a wrestling promo? Like she's just like boasting about it. Like I can only hope Ric Flair read it for ideas, because like she's just boasting about her diamonds, her big. I mean, it's like almost an influence on hip hop, that thing. I mean, hip hop was already happening, but she's just talking about her champagne, her diamonds, her mansion. It is worth a read. The autobiography.
Well, Bob, let's look at the rest of her filmography. Tattooed Teenage Alien Fighters from Beverly Hills, 1995.
Oh man.
Oh no.
The Beverly Hillbillies on television, right? The
Okay.
Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, 1991.
Frankenstein's great aunt Tilly from 1984.
Yeah, The Naked Gun 2.5, The
Yes.
Monsters of Today, right?
She
Christmas
slapped.
at Pee Wee.
She slapped the
Christmas.
cop in that.
Oh God, yeah,
Naked Gun.
yeah.
Wait. Christmas at Pee Wee's Playhouse, 88.
Of course.
Dude, yeah, she's
Camp
just
icon.
she's just amazing. I mean, this is like a 2-hour epic old movies for young stoners with less people. Let me get the fodderall out of the way, folks. Queen of Outer Space is available on Daily Motion, and you can rent it from Prime for $2.99. Hey, Floyd, thank you so much for being on the show. It's been a trip, man.
This is fun.
Like,
This is fun.
Thanks, man.
Even though I'm not stoned.
yeah,
this
no.
is fun.
Greg said, he's
I'm stoned enough for both of us.
yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah, Greg asked, like, he smokes weed, right? He's gonna have weed recommendations, and I'm like, no, Floyd doesn't smoke weed. He just sounds stoned.
No, he doesn't.
He just sounds stoned. I mean, or talking to Floyd
No.
for an hour and a half.
I've been stoned off that first joint, that first Vietnamese dusty joint I had in night when I was 12, living in the projects. I never recovered from it, man. I said I don't need to do another joint in life. that was before the skunk smell and stuff, man, that you can smell. Nothing like driving down the expressway 60 miles an hour and a car passes you and sits in front of you for 2 minutes and the odor lingers for half an hour.
Yes.
Dude, I want to know about this Vietnamese dusted weed now, though.
Oh man, it came into the projects in a duffel bag of somebody just returning. You know,
Right.
who was in that ultra the very first years.
MK Ultra?
Yeah, man.
Yeah, so you were
he
smoking
was
some
involved in that.
CIA shit?
I don't know if it was CIA, but all I know is the guy brought it back, and they made me do it. And I remember seeing a CTA bus turn into a green caterpillar, and I went home and got up under the bed. Man, and said, "I'm never touching herb again in life."
Wow.
You know, and that probably saved my life.
Oh man, I
You know,
want the weed that turns this.
Because for the rest of my life, and I was surrounded by people doing all kinds of crazy, the craziest narcotics and having the most crazy experiences. I'd be the only sober person in the room, but hey, I kept us out of trouble though. You know?
Well, somebody's got to do it. I know that role very well during these tapings. But hey, Floyd, again, thank you. Blacknuss TV, BLACKNUSS.TV, Blacknuss Network. It's less than $40 for a year if you sign up for a year for their streaming service. They're doing some great things, making some great movies available, like Top of the Heap.
$3.99 a month.
$3.99 a month.
Yeah,
you know?
Hey, just out of curiosity, $3.99. Hey, you can come back later, as we grow.
Yeah, watch it, watch everything on it, watch.
And then
I know he's working on getting Shaolin Dolomite on there, and that's enough for $3.99.
Right.
That's an old movie for young stoners, and and he's got some other space movies: Assignment Outer Space, First Spaceship on Venus.
We're going to be doing a little documentary about Thomas Trammell, the guy who was in 13 kung fu movies, Chicago guy.
Yeah,
learn martial arts at the movies.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Well, let's save that for a future episode, Floyd.
Okay.
Like maybe at some point we'll pair Manchurian Candidate with its Henry Silva and Frank karate chopping furniture, and then we'll have Black Dolomite or Treasure of the Ninja on there. We're taking a little bit of a break here. We'll be back in August, and I have no idea what we're going to be showing or talking about then. Corey and Felina will be back then too. But I've got some ideas, so Maybe we'll do a musical episode. There's a lot of great stuff that's just hit Criterion and HBO Max, so I'm kind of thinking of On to Town with Listzomania, like a musical episode. Lots of dicks in that last one. Also,
Jeff Bezos should watch that movie.
Yeah, oh, that's definitely maybe a plastic surgery episode with Dark Passage and Seconds, which are on those services, or
Botchamania.
I still want to do the gorilla episode with King Kong and some of the inane gorilla movies on Prime. I mean, there are all kinds of things. Hey, you've got about a month. Why don't you tell me on Twitter at OM4YStoners, what you want to see out there, folks. We're open to ideas. We'll see you back again on Old Movies for Young Stoners.